There is an urgent turning point on the front. Pokrovsk and Kupiansk are literally ablaze with fighting. It is precisely there that it is now being decided whether the enemy will manage to break through our defenses. The Russians are throwing in reserves, equipment, and aviation, trying to forcefully change the situation. Ukrainian defenders are holding their ground to the last, maintaining their positions. The situation is changing every second, and the next few hours could determine the entire further course of the war. All the exclusive details about this are coming up right now.
Pokrovsk played a cruel joke on the occupiers. While the enemy threw all its forces into a desperate attempt to take control of the ruins of the city destroyed by the Russian army, the Ukrainian armed forces launched a counterattack 200 kilometers to the north. The enemy forces near Kupiansk suffered huge losses, according to the Ukrainian command, and they were forced to retreat.
The enemy was cleared out from the northwestern outskirts. They are no longer there, and this is a huge achievement.
In fact, the Ukrainian armed forces have cut off the Russian invaders in the northern part of Kupiansk from their main supplies of cannon fodder and ammunition. Next, according to Commander Fedorenko, his unit, as well as adjacent units, began locating and clearing out the remaining Russian sabotage groups. As of now, the operation is almost complete.
If you open an analytical map right now, which more or less accurately reflects the front line, you will see that, as for the northern outskirts, it was possible to push the enemy back quite significantly. And what does that mean? The farther we push the enemy away from the northern outskirts of the city of Kupiansk, the less space they have to send their sabotage groups into the city of Kupiansk itself.
But unfortunately, the armed forces of Ukraine cannot boast of such brilliant successes on other hottest sections of the front near Pokrovsk and in the city itself. Russian assaults there do not stop, neither by day nor by night. It seems the Kremlin has thrown all its forces into capturing the city. However, despite these efforts, the Ukrainian command notes that our defenders are heroically holding the line.
The situation in and around Pokrovsk is extremely difficult. But at the same time, we're still somehow holding on.
According to the military, most of the city is now in the so-called gray zone. This is when control over the territory constantly shifts from one side to the other and fighting takes place for every entrance. Syrskyi also fully understands the complexity of the situation in Pokrovsk. In particular, the commander-in-chief stated that the AFU units and others. The defense forces continue to carry out their tasks in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration area, despite the fact that there remains a high level of enemy activity in the sector.
There remains a high level of enemy activity, which our units are able to counter thanks to clear coordination and well-coordinated actions. We are working to ensure the stability of our logistics and are taking measures to disrupt the enemy's supply routes.
Nevertheless, the situation in the Pokrovsk direction remains extremely difficult. The enemy, despite suffering losses, continues to assault the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. The commander-in-chief is sharing operational information.
In just the past 4 days in the Pokrovsk direction, the total losses of the occupiers amounted to 487 personnel. Of these, 350 are irrecoverable losses. The exchange fund is being replenished.
For security reasons, the Ukrainian command does not disclose further details about the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. But when it comes to special operations that have already been completed on the front line, those can be discussed. For example, the head of the main intelligence directorate, Kirailo Budanov, gave an interview in which he shared details about one of the most daring airborne operations carried out by the GUA. During this operation, special forces who had taken up certain positions behind enemy lines managed to break through to those positions. A full-fledged foreign corridor. At that time, Budanov himself was nearby and was in command of the operation.
Why was that operation necessary in exactly that form? Because the situation was extremely tense and critical. I want to remind you that all of this happened against the backdrop of official statements from the Russian Federation about the capture of the city, when Gerasimov was reporting to Putin that the city had been taken. And here you need to understand what the situation was like at that moment. Nothing else would have worked. What we did was secure valuable and precious time so that the main units of the armed forces could calmly, as much as possible, approach the location to reinforce, so to speak.
It is possible that at this very moment, a special unit of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine is carrying out another special operation in the Pokrovsk direction. Information is already appearing in military public channels about the clearing of Pokrovsk, strikes on enemy supply lines, and the establishment of alternative logistics routes now for the armed forces of Ukraine. So all we can do is wait for the official confirmation of good news from the Ukrainian command.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Urgently, the armed forces of Ukraine are once again showing results. Right now, drones are setting the pace and direction of the war. Ukrainian soldiers are confidently mastering the latest technologies. Strike drones are continuously delivering pinpoint strikes on the enemy, hitting key positions on the front line. The Russians are in a panic, chaotically launching their own devices in response. Before our eyes, a true battle of technologies is unfolding. What new solutions are Ukrainian forces employing, and when can we expect a decisive move? All the details are in the report. Coming up next.
A UAV operator from the 110th Separate Mechanized Brigade perfectly drops a grenade into a trench with Russian soldiers. One of them tries to throw out the explosive but doesn't make it in time. As a result of the successful drop, several occupiers were eliminated. This is exactly what modern warfare looks like now. Virtually no assaults or frontal attacks with equipment. Drones have put an end to positional warfare. An article with this very headline was published in the American outlet Politico.
The fighting in Ukraine no longer resembles the trench warfare of World War I. Instead, drones have erased the continuous front line, creating a kill zone. As a result, a gray zone of chaos has formed, stretching about 20 kilometers from the front line, where drones hunt soldiers. The wounded are left to die as evacuating them is extremely difficult. And delivering ammunition, food and water to the soldiers fighting there is practically impossible.
The sky above the gray zone is shrouded in smoke from the drones. UAVs are equipped with thermal imagers, cameras, bombs and cannons, and some lie on the roads for hours waiting for military vehicles to pass by. At the same time, there is a hunt for UAV pilots who are sitting tens of kilometers away.
We have moved on to a war of drones against drones. Now drones can set up ambushes, intercept enemy logistics systems, and disrupt supplies. In addition, it has become more difficult to hold positions. If you are detected, all the weaponry in the area will immediately be directed at your destruction. Pavlo Polisa, Colonel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
Russian military public pages are quoting this article, but as always, in their own way. Here's one example of Russian propaganda where it says that Russian drones give the Ukrainian armed forces no respite, although in reality it's exactly the opposite.
Because of Russian drones, Ukrainian soldiers are forced to stay at their positions for weeks. Drones make evacuation, rotation, and the delivery of ammunition and supplies extremely dangerous.
Information from open sources shows that it is actually the Russian army that abandons its wounded soldiers instead of evacuating them. Today, Russia is also trying not to fall behind in the production of various strike UAVs. For example, in frontline areas, the enemy has started using a new type of Iranian drone, the Shahed 101, with a warhead weighing 8 to 9 kilograms and a flight range of several hundred kilometers. So far, the occupiers have not managed to localize the production of this drone in Russia. The UAV was manufactured in Iran in 2024, but it's only a matter of time. The Russians quickly learn from their mistakes.
And they have some very advanced and sophisticated technological developments. Their science is extremely well organized, highly structured and functioning efficiently. Thanks to this, they manage to effectively suppress and break any form of internal resistance, as well as any attempts to oppose or resist the war effort. And so, as a result of these developments, the entire machine works seamlessly. They were preparing for war, they realized the importance of readiness for viewing Shahida, the Lancets, and the deployment of drones.
Have become so effective that they have even pushed artillery away from the front line and made it impossible to use armored vehicles to supply troops.
Drones have become useful for delivery and evacuation, combat reconnaissance, and remote mining. Tasks that were previously usually performed by people in war.
Despite different resource capabilities, Ukraine now has parity with Russia in drones, and in some areas even an advantage. But the development of this military component does not stop for even a minute.
That's all from me for this YouTube episode. This was me, Darina Hutsakalo. There will be even more scorching news in our next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you!